Captain Lee Do-yun stood on the bridge of the starship Harmony, watching the massive space station grow larger on the main screen. Centralis was the heart of the Galactic Council, a huge structure that housed representatives from 12 different alien species. For 50 years, Earth had been part of this council, but Do-yun often felt like humans were still treated as children. "We're getting close, Captain," said Lieutenant Park at the navigation station. "Docking Bay 7 is ready for us." Do-yun nodded. "Take us in slowly. We don't want to upset anyone today." Dr. Kim Hyeri walked onto the bridge carrying a datapad filled with notes about the alien species they would meet. She was Earth's best expert on alien cultures and had spent years learning how to talk to different species without causing problems. "The Nexari delegation arrived yesterday," Hyeri said, checking her notes. "Counselor Vexthar is leading their group. From what I know about him, he doesn't think much of humans." "That's nothing new," Do-yun replied. "Half the council thinks we're too young to have real opinions about anything." The Harmony docked smoothly at Centralis. As they walked through the station's corridors, Do-yun and Hyeri saw aliens of all shapes and sizes. The Zephyrians looked like tall, thin birds with blue feathers. The Karathi were short and round with thick gray skin. The Nexari were the most human-like, but they were taller and had golden skin that seemed to glow. The council chamber was enormous, with seats arranged in a circle. Each species had their own section with special equipment to help them breathe and stay comfortable. The human section was small compared to the others, with only 3 seats. Elder Quilinth, the oldest member of the council, called the meeting to order. He was a Zephyrian who had lived for over 800 years and had seen many species join and leave the council. "Today, we discuss the territorial dispute in the Kepler sector," Quilinth announced in his slow, careful voice. Counselor Vexthar stood up from the Nexari section. He was tall and impressive, with golden skin that caught the light. His voice was strong and confident. "The Nexari Empire has the right to expand into empty space. These worlds have no intelligent life and are perfect for our colonies." Do-yun raised his hand. "Those worlds aren't empty. 3 of them have human colonies and 2 more are marked for future settlement." Vexthar looked at Do-yun like he was looking at an annoying insect. "Human colonies? You mean those small farming settlements with a few thousand people each? The Nexari Empire has billions of citizens who need new homes. Surely the council can see that our needs are more important." "Important?" Do-yun stood up, his voice getting louder. "Those are human worlds with human families. You can't just take them because you want them." Several council members started talking at once. The Karathi representative made angry clicking sounds, while the crystal-like Silicari flashed different colors to show their feelings. Vexthar smiled, but it wasn't a friendly smile. "Captain Do-yun, your species is still very young. You've been in space for less than 200 years. The Nexari Empire has been building civilization for over 5,000 years. Perhaps it's time you learned your place." Dr. Hyeri touched Do-yun's arm, trying to calm him down. "Counselor Vexthar, we understand that the Nexari are an ancient and powerful species. But the council laws say that all members have equal rights, regardless of age." "Laws?" Vexthar laughed, and several other Nexari council members laughed with him. "Laws are made by those with the power to enforce them. Tell me, Dr. Hyeri, how many warships does Earth have?" Hyeri looked uncomfortable. "The Earth Defense Fleet has 47 ships." 47, Vexthar repeated, still smiling. "The Nexari Empire has over 3,000 warships. Our smallest battlecruiser could destroy your entire fleet." Elder Quilinth watched the argument with interest, his large bird-like eyes moving between the humans and the Nexari. He had seen many species rise and fall over the centuries, and something about the humans caught his attention. "Perhaps," Quilinth said slowly, "we should vote on this matter." The vote was quick and predictable. 8 species voted with the Nexari. 2 species voted with the humans. 1 species didn't vote at all. Elder Quilinth abstained, which meant he didn't choose either side. "The motion passes," Quilinth announced. "The Nexari Empire may proceed with colonization of the disputed worlds." Vexthar looked very pleased with himself. "Excellent. Oh, and one more thing." He turned to look directly at Do-yun. "The Nexari Empire believes that Earth's recent behavior shows that humans are not ready for full council membership. We propose that Earth's speaking privileges be suspended until they learn proper diplomatic behavior." "You can't do that," Do-yun shouted, but the vote was even faster this time. 9 species voted to suspend Earth speaking privileges. Only 2 voted against it. Elder Quilinth abstained again. As the council meeting ended, Doyun and Hyeri walked back to their ship in silence. They passed groups of aliens talking and laughing, but none of them looked at the humans. "This is bad," Hyeri said quietly. "Without speaking privileges, we can't defend our colonies or protest any Nexari actions." "It gets worse," Dohyun said, checking his communication device. "Long-range sensors are picking up massive Nexari fleet movements. They're heading toward our outer colonies." Back on the Harmony, Dohyun sat in his captain's chair and stared at the star charts. The Nexari fleets were moving fast, and there wasn't much the small human colonies could do to defend themselves. Lieutenant Park looked worried. "Captain, should we send a warning to the colonies?" "They already know," Dohyun said. "Admiral Park has been watching Nexari movements for weeks." Dr. Hyeri frowned. "Admiral Park? Your brother? What does the head of the Earth Defense Fleet have to do with this?" Before Dohyun could answer, his communication device beeped with an encrypted message. The sender was listed as Jinwoo, which was Admiral Park's first name. Dohyun opened the message and read it carefully. His face changed as he read the words. Dr. Hyeri watched him with growing concern. "What does it say?" she asked. Dohyun looked up from the message, and for the first time since the council meeting, he smiled. "It says they're coming. Operation Sleeping Tiger is now active." "Operation Sleeping Tiger? What's that?" "I don't know," Dohyun said, but his smile grew wider. "But I have a feeling the Nexari are about to learn that Earth has a few surprises." As the Harmony left Centralis and headed back toward Earth space, none of the aliens on the space station paid attention to the small human ship. They were too busy celebrating the Nexari victory and discussing how to divide up the new territories. Elder Quilinth stood at a window in his private chambers, watching the human ship disappear into the darkness of space. His old eyes had seen many species underestimate newcomers before. It rarely ended well for those who did the underestimating. "Interesting," he said to himself. "Very interesting indeed." The Nexari First Fleet dropped out of hyperspace near Kepler 442b, like a storm of golden death. Admiral Zeth commanded the fleet from his flagship, a massive dreadnought called the Golden Sword. He had fought in dozens of battles and conquered 17 worlds for the Nexari Empire. This would be his easiest victory yet. "Enemy contacts detected," reported his tactical officer. 3 human destroyers and 5 corvettes. They're moving to intercept us." Admiral Zeth laughed. 8 ships? That's all they have to defend an entire world? He turned to his communication officer. "Send a message to the human fleet. Tell them to surrender now, and we won't destroy their cities." On the human destroyer Defiant, Captain Nam Woojin received the Nexari message. He was a young officer, only 30 years old, but he had trained for this moment his entire life. "Send back our reply," he told his communications officer. "Tell them Earth doesn't surrender." The space battle began exactly as Admiral Zeth expected. The human ships were smaller and weaker than his warships. Their weapons barely scratched the shields of his cruisers. One by one, the human ships were destroyed. Captain Nam's Defiant was the last to fall, fighting bravely until the end. "Pathetic," Admiral Zeth said as he watched the human ships explode. "Land the troops. This world is ours." But hidden in an asteroid field near the edge of the system, the real human ship Silent Dawn watched everything through advanced sensors. Captain Nam Woojin was actually safe on this ship, along with Colonel Choi Minho and a team of Special Operations soldiers. The ships that had just been destroyed were clever fakes filled with recording equipment instead of people. "Did you get everything?" Colonel Choi asked Engineer Yoon Sora, who was studying the data from the fake ships. "Perfect recordings," Yoon replied, her fingers flying over the control panels. "Weapon frequencies, shield harmonics, communication codes, battle tactics. The fake ships transmitted everything before they were destroyed." Colonel Choi smiled grimly. "Good. Let the Nexari think they won. They'll get careless." On the surface of Kepler 442b, the Nexari troops landed and began setting up their occupation force. The human colonists had evacuated to underground shelters, but they left behind what looked like a normal farming colony. The Nexari soldiers were relaxed and confident. This had been too easy. What they didn't know was that every building, every piece of equipment, even some of the farm animals had hidden cameras and listening devices. Colonel Choi's intelligence teams had been preparing for this moment for months. They recorded everything: how the Nexari organized their troops, what equipment they used, how they communicated with their ships. Meanwhile, In a secret laboratory on Earth, Dr. Kim Hyeri worked with a team of scientists to study the Nexari psychology files that intelligence agents had gathered over the years. They're proud, she explained to her team. Too proud. They believe they're superior to all other species, especially humans. That pride will be their weakness. Engineer Yoon Sora had returned to Earth with the data from the fake ships. In her underground workshop, she and her team worked day and night to understand Nexari technology. Their shields use rotating frequencies, she explained to Admiral Park Jinwoo during a secure video call. If we can match those frequencies exactly, we can pass right through them. Admiral Park studied the technical data on his screen. He was a careful man who planned every detail of his operations. How long until you can build weapons that use this technology? We already have, Yoon said with a tired smile. We've been working on this for 3 years, ever since we first encountered Nexari ships. We just needed real battle data to finish the project. Back near Kepler 442b, Admiral Zeth received reports that his occupation was going smoothly. The human colonists were hiding in their shelters and didn't seem willing to fight. Excellent, he said. Send a message to the Nexari High Command. Tell them we've conquered our first human world. It was easier than taking candy from a child. What Admiral Zeth didn't know was that similar easy victories were happening at 5 other human colonies. At each world, small human fleets fought bravely and were destroyed. Nexari troops landed and set up occupation forces, and at each world, the Silent Dawn or ships like it watched and recorded everything. The Nexari commanders all sent the same message to their leaders. Humans were weak and couldn't fight effectively. Their technology was primitive and their tactics were predictable. The conquest of Earth would be simple. On Earth, President Ominji met with her military leaders in a secret bunker deep underground. She had been a military strategist before becoming president, and she understood what the Nexari invasion meant. How many of our colonies have they taken? She asked Admiral Park. 6 worlds as planned, Admiral Park replied. The colonists are safe in the underground shelters we built. The Nexari think they've conquered farming settlements, but they've actually just taken over elaborate movie sets. And our real military strength? Admiral Park smiled. Hidden and ready. The Nexari scanned our defense fleet and saw exactly what we wanted them to see. 47 old ships that we wanted to get rid of anyway. They have no idea what we've really been building. In another part of the bunker, Agent Ko Yoonbi prepared for her most dangerous mission yet. She had been trained to look and act like a Nexari citizen, and she spoke their language perfectly. I'll infiltrate their trade networks, she explained to her handler. They'll never suspect that a Nexari merchant is actually a human spy. Dr. Lim Jae-min, Earth's top quantum physicist, worked in a laboratory so secret that most of the government didn't know it existed. His team had been developing weapons that used the fundamental forces of the universe itself. The gravitational disruptors are ready, he reported to Admiral Park. We can tear apart their ships from the inside. As the days passed, the Nexari grew more confident. Their intelligence reports all said the same thing. Humans were weak, disorganized, and completely defeated. Admiral Zeth and the other fleet commanders began planning the final assault on Earth itself. We'll take the human homeworld in a single day, Admiral Zeth told his officers. Their pathetic defense fleet won't last an hour against our full battle fleet. But in the asteroid belt of the Sol system, massive space stations hummed with quiet activity. Admiral Kang Sunmi commanded the real Earth defense fleet from her flagship, the Indomitable. Around her, hundreds of advanced warships waited in the darkness, their crews ready for battle. Let them come, Admiral Kang said as she watched the approaching Nexari fleet on her long-range sensors. We've been waiting for this moment for 50 years. Lieutenant Han Dong-yuk sat in the cockpit of his strike fighter, checking his weapon systems one more time. His squadron was equipped with the most advanced ships Earth had ever built, using technology that the Nexari couldn't even imagine. Tiger Squadron. Ready for launch, he reported to the Indomitable. Not yet, Admiral Kang replied. Let them get closer. Let them think they've already won. The trap was set. The Nexari were coming, confident in their superiority and completely unaware that Earth had been preparing for this war since the day humans first met aliens. Soon the hunters would become the hunted, and the galaxy would learn that underestimating humanity was a very dangerous mistake. The Nexari Grand Fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system like a golden wall of death. Over 800 warships, including massive dreadnoughts that could destroy entire cities with a single shot. Admiral Vorth, the supreme commander of the Nexari Navy, stood on the bridge of his flagship and smiled with satisfaction. "Look at this pathetic system," he said to his officers. "One small star, a few rocky planets, and the primitive world they call Earth. How did such weak creatures ever reach the stars?" On Centralis, Councillor Vexthar addressed the Galactic Council with obvious pleasure. "Fellow council members, we are here to discuss the unfortunate terrorism that humans have committed against peaceful Nexari colonies. Our investigation shows that human extremists attacked innocent civilians on 6 worlds." Elder Quillenth shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "Councillor Vexthar, our report suggests that these were military conflicts, not terrorist attacks." "With respect, Elder Quillenth, your information is incorrect," Vexthar replied smoothly. "The humans used surprise attacks against unsuspecting colonists. This cannot be allowed to continue. The Nexari Empire requests permission to conduct a police action to restore order." The vote was swift. 9 species voted in favor of the Nexari request. Only the Zephyrians and 1 other species voted against it. Elder Quillenth's ancient eyes watched the proceedings with growing concern. In the Sol system, Admiral Vorth's fleet moved slowly toward Earth. His sensors showed exactly what he expected to see. A few dozen old human ships retreating toward their homeworld, desperately trying to evacuate civilians. "Send a message to Earth," Admiral Vorth commanded. "Tell them we are here to restore peace and order. If they surrender now, we will be merciful." But hidden throughout the asteroid belt, massive space stations powered up their engines and weapons. These weren't the small mining outposts they appeared to be. They were fortress stations, each one armed with weapons powerful enough to destroy entire fleets. Admiral Kang Sunmi watched the Nexari advance from her command center deep inside the largest asteroid fortress. Around her, hundreds of officers monitored every ship in the enemy fleet. They had been tracking the Nexari for weeks, studying their formations and tactics. "They're moving just like we predicted," reported Commander Lee Jihoon from the tactical station. "Formation Delta 7, exactly what our computers said they would use." "Perfect," Admiral Kang replied. "Signal all stations. Prepare for Operation Thunderstrike." The Nexari fleet passed Jupiter without incident. Admiral Vorth was pleased to see that the human ships continued to retreat. "They know they cannot win," he told his officers. "This will be over quickly." But as the Nexari ships moved deeper into the system, something strange began to happen. The asteroids around them started to move. What had looked like empty space suddenly filled with massive structures. Hidden doors opened in asteroids, revealing weapon batteries that were larger than most starships. "What is this?" Admiral Vorth demanded as his sensors suddenly detected hundreds of new contacts. Before his officers could answer, the space around the Nexari fleet exploded with weapon fire. The asteroids that had seemed empty were actually camouflaged battle stations. Beams of energy that could cut through a planet's crust tore into the Nexari ships. "Shields up. Return fire," Admiral Vorth shouted. But worse was coming. Admiral Kang's hidden fleet decloaked all around the Nexari formation. Hundreds of human warships appeared as if from nowhere, their advanced stealth systems finally revealing the trap. "This is Admiral Kang Sunmi of the Earth Defense Fleet," came a broadcast on all frequencies. "You are guilty of unprovoked attacks on human colonies. Surrender now or face the consequences." Admiral Vorth stared at his tactical display in shock. Where there had been empty space moments before, there were now over 600 human warships. His fleet was surrounded and outnumbered. "Impossible," he whispered. "Our intelligence said they only had 47 ships. The human attack was unlike anything the Nexari had ever faced." Lieutenant Han Dong-hyuk led Tiger Squadron in a strike against the Nexari flagship. His fighters used quantum tunneling technology to appear inside the enemy's shields, firing their weapons before disappearing again. "Tiger leader to Tiger Squadron," Han called over the radio. "Use the Ghost Protocol. Hit them from inside their defenses." The Nexari gunners tried to track the human fighters, but they kept vanishing and reappearing in impossible locations. The fighters were small and fast, darting between the massive Nexari ships like angry insects. Engineer Yoon Sora's weapons performed exactly as designed. Human ships fired beams that passed through Nexari shields as if they weren't there. The carefully gathered intelligence from the fake battles had allowed Earth's scientists to build weapons that could ignore Nexari defenses. completely, but the most terrifying. Weapons came from Dr. Lim Jamin's secret laboratory. Gravitational disruptors hit the Nexari dreadnoughts and began tearing them apart from the inside. The massive ships twisted and buckled as their own gravity was turned against them. "Retreat," Admiral Vorth finally ordered as his flagship shuddered under the human assault. "All ships retreat immediately." But the human fleet wasn't finished. Admiral Kang had planned this battle for years, and she wasn't going to let the Nexari escape easily. Human ships pursued the fleeing Nexari, destroying any vessel that couldn't keep up with the retreat. "Let some of them go," Admiral Kang ordered her commanders. "We want survivors to tell their leaders what happened here." The battle was over in 3 hours. The mighty Nexari Grand Fleet had been reduced to less than 200 ships, many of them badly damaged. They limped away from Earth in complete defeat, leaving behind the wreckage of their companions. On the bridge of his damaged flagship, Admiral Vorth tried to understand what had happened. "How?" he asked his tactical officer. "How did they hide so many ships?" "Sir," the officer replied nervously, "our communication systems have been compromised. The humans have been listening to our transmissions for months. They knew we were coming." Admiral Vorth felt cold fear creep up his spine. If the humans had been monitoring Nexari communications, they would know the location of every military base, every supply depot, every command center in the Empire. His fears were confirmed when the reports started coming in. All across Nexari space, human strike forces were attacking military installations. Bases that had stood for centuries were being destroyed in coordinated strikes. The humans weren't just defending themselves anymore. They were on the attack. On Earth, President Ominji stood in the command center, watching the reports flood in from across the galaxy. Operation Thunderstrike had been just the beginning. Now came Operation Lightning Fang, the systematic destruction of Nexari military power. "How many targets have we hit?" she asked Admiral Park. 47 installations destroyed or captured in the first wave, Admiral Park reported. "The second wave is launching now. Captain Song's Deep Strike Force is moving toward the Nexari core worlds. In the Galactic Council chambers on Centralis, emergency alarms were ringing. Reports of human attacks on Nexari positions were coming in faster than the Council could process them." Counselor Vexthar, who had been so confident hours earlier, now looked pale and frightened. "This is impossible," he shouted at the other council members. "Humans don't have the technology or the numbers to attack our empire." Elder Quillenth watched the chaos with ancient, knowing eyes. "Perhaps, Counselor Vexthar, you should have listened more carefully to what the humans were saying, instead of dismissing them as primitives." The Zephyrian Elder had lived long enough to see many proud species fall because they underestimated their opponents. The Nexari had made the same mistake that so many others had made before them. They had confused youth with weakness and small size with helplessness. Now they were learning the truth about humanity. Earth was small and young, but humans were clever, determined, and capable of planning far ahead. The Nexari had awakened a sleeping giant, and that giant was very, very angry. As reports continued to pour in of human victories across the galaxy, one thing became clear to everyone watching. The balance of power in the galaxy had shifted forever. The age of Nexari dominance was ending, and the age of humanity was just beginning. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was the most chaotic in its 1,000-year history. Representatives from 12 species shouted, clicked, hummed, and flashed at each other as reports continued to pour in from across the galaxy. In just 24 hours, the human military had destroyed or captured over 100 Nexari installations across 15 star systems. Counselor Vexthar stood at the center of the chamber, his golden skin pale with shock and fear. "Fellow council members, this unprovoked human aggression must be stopped immediately. They are attacking peaceful Nexari colonies and destroying civilian installations." "Peaceful?" The voice that interrupted him was calm but cold. It came from the human communication system, and everyone in the chamber recognized it as belonging to President Ominji of Earth. A holographic image of the human president appeared in the center of the council chamber. She was a small woman with gray hair and intelligent eyes, but there was something in her expression that made even the largest aliens feel uncomfortable. "Counselor Vexthar," President O continued, "would you like to explain to the council what you consider peaceful about weapons platforms capable of destroying entire planets? Or perhaps you'd like to discuss the slave labor camps we found on Nexari mining worlds?" Elder Quillenth leaned forward in his seat. President O, these are serious accusations. Do you have evidence? I do. The president's image gestured and new holograms appeared around the chamber. They showed detailed scans of Nexari military installations, recorded conversations between Nexari commanders, and horrifying images of alien workers in chains. Agent Ko Yunbi had done her job perfectly. For 3 years she had lived among the Nexari as a successful merchant, gathering evidence of their crimes. Her disguise had been so perfect that she had been invited to high-level meetings where Nexari leaders discussed their plans to enslave other species. These recordings show Nexari officials planning to attack and conquer 7 other council species. President O announced they intended to use those worlds as sources of slave labor for their empire. The council chamber erupted in angry voices. The Karathi delegation made loud clicking sounds that meant extreme anger in their language. The crystal-like Silicari flashed bright red, which was their equivalent of shouting. Even the normally calm Aquarans began making the deep humming sounds that indicated they were ready for war. Councillor Vexthar tried to speak over the noise. These are fabrications, human lies designed to turn you against the Nexari Empire. Are they? Agent Ko Yunbi's voice came from the chamber entrance. She walked into the room, no longer disguised as a Nexari, but clearly human. I recorded these conversations myself while living on your homeworld. Would you like me to play the recording where you personally ordered the construction of slave camps on Kepler 438? Vexthar's face went from pale to bright red. You're the merchant Zara. You've been spying on us. For 3 years, Ko confirmed with a satisfied smile. Amazing how much Nexari leaders will say when they think no other species can understand their language. President O's hologram turned to address the full council. For too long, the Nexari Empire has used fear and intimidation to control this council. They convinced you to vote against human interest by threatening you with their military power. Well, that military power no longer exists. As if to prove her point, new reports began arriving in the council chamber. Captain Song Hyun-woo's Deep Strike Force had just destroyed the main Nexari naval shipyard at Vega Prime. The massive facility, which had been building warships for 200 years, was now a cloud of expanding debris. The Nexari Empire will stand trial for war crimes, President O announced. They will pay reparations to the species they have enslaved and threatened, and they will surrender their remaining military forces for inspection. Never, Vexthar shouted. The Nexari Empire will not surrender to a primitive species like humanity. President O's expression didn't change, but her voice became even colder. That is your choice, Counselor. But let me show you what defiance will cost you. The holographic display changed to show a massive human warship approaching an uninhabited world in Nexari space. The ship was unlike anything the council members had ever seen. It was 5 kilometers long and bristled with weapons that seemed to bend space itself around them. This is the UES Retribution, President O explained. Captain Song Hyun-woo, please demonstrate our planet cracking capability on the abandoned Nexari fortress world of Keth-9. The council members watched in horrified silence as the Retribution fired a single beam of energy at the planet. The world simply disappeared. Not exploded, not shattered, but completely disintegrated into component atoms in less than 10 seconds. That was an uninhabited world. President O said quietly. The next target will be chosen by Councillor Vexthar. Will it be another empty world? Or will it be a Nexari colony with billions of innocent civilians? Vexthar collapsed into his seat, his face showing pure terror. Around the chamber, other council members stared at the empty space where a planet had been moments before. Elder Quillenth was the first to speak. President O, surely you would not destroy inhabited worlds. We would prefer not to, the president replied. But Earth will not allow the Nexari Empire to continue threatening peaceful species. If they choose to fight rather than face justice, we will do whatever is necessary to stop them. The threat was clear, and it was backed by devastating power. In less than 2 days, humanity had proven that it could destroy the Nexari Empire completely, if it chose to do so. Dr. Kim Hyeri, now serving as Earth's chief negotiator, appeared beside President O's hologram. The choice is simple, she said in her calm, diplomatic voice. The Nexari Empire can surrender and face fair trials for their crimes, or they can continue to fight and face complete destruction. We are prepared for either outcome. Reports continued to arrive from across Nexari space. Human strike forces had captured 3 major military bases intact, along with thousands of Nexari personnel. The evidence of war crimes was overwhelming. Documents, recordings, and physical evidence of slavery, planned genocide, and systematic oppression of other species. How? Vextar whispered, more to himself than to anyone else. How did you know where all our bases were? Agent Ko smiled. Because I had access to all your military planning computers. I copied everything. Ship movements, base locations, supply routes, command codes. You invited me to strategy meetings because you thought I was one of you. Supreme Admiral Ryu Tai-hyung's image appeared next to President Oh. He was an older man with wise eyes and a calm demeanor, but there was steel in his voice. The Nexari Empire has 1 hour to decide. Surrender for trial, or face the consequences of continued resistance. In the Nexari section of the council chamber, frantic conversations took place between Vextar and his advisors. Emergency communications with the Nexari homeworld painted a grim picture. Their military was in ruins, their secret plans were exposed, and they faced an enemy that had technology they couldn't understand or defeat. As the hour passed, more human capabilities were revealed. Long-range scanners detected massive fleets moving toward every major Nexari world. The humans hadn't just built a defense force. They had built an invasion armada capable of conquering the entire Nexari Empire. Counselor Vextar, Elder Quillenth said gently, perhaps it is time to accept reality. The Nexari Empire is defeated. Other council members began to speak up. The Karathi representative, whose people had been threatened by Nexari expansion for decades, demanded that the evidence of war crimes be fully investigated. The Silicari, who communicated through color changes, flashed patterns that meant justice must be served. With 5 minutes left in the ultimatum, Vextar finally stood up. His proud posture was gone, replaced by the slumped shoulders of a defeated leader. The Nexari Empire, he began, his voice cracking. The Nexari Empire surrenders unconditionally to the authority of the Galactic Council and accepts the jurisdiction of Earth for our military crimes. President O nodded formally. The Earth government accepts your surrender. Nexari military forces will be disarmed and their leaders will face trial. The enslaved peoples will be freed and reparations will be paid to all victims. As the council session ended, Elder Quillenth approached the human communication system. President O, I must ask, how long have you been planning this? The president smiled for the first time during the entire proceedings. Elder Quillenth, we began planning our response to Nexari aggression the day they first threatened a human colony. We knew this confrontation was inevitable. We simply chose the time and place. The galaxy had learned a hard lesson about underestimating humanity. The small young species from the third planet of an unremarkable star system had just brought the mighty Nexari Empire to its knees in less than 48 hours. The age of Nexari dominance was over. The age of human influence had begun. 6 months after the fall of the Nexari Empire, the Galactic Council gathered for its most important session in over a millennium. The massive chamber on Centralis had been redesigned to remove the hierarchy that had given larger, older species more influence than others. Now all 12 species sat as equals in a perfect circle. Ambassador Jin Soo-young represented humanity in the new council. She was younger than the previous human diplomats, but her intelligence and calm manner had earned respect from even the most skeptical alien species. Beside her sat Captain Lee Do-yun, now promoted to admiral and serving as Earth's military liaison. Elder Quillenth called the session to order with his ceremonial staff. At 850 years old, he had agreed to serve as temporary chairman while the council established new rules for galactic governance. We gather today, Quillenth announced in his slow, careful voice, to formally establish the new galactic compact. The trials of Nexari war criminals have concluded, and we must now decide how to prevent such abuses of power from happening again. The trials had been thorough and fair. Counselor Vextar and 47 other Nexari leaders had been convicted of war crimes, slavery, and genocide. They would spend the rest of their lives in prison colonies, helping to rebuild the worlds they had destroyed. The Nexari people themselves had been freed from their oppressive government, and were now building a democratic society. Supreme Admiral Ryu Tai-hyung had overseen the liberation of 12 worlds where the Nexari had used slave labor. Millions of aliens from 6 different species had been freed and returned to their homeworlds. The gratitude of these species had changed the political landscape of the galaxy forever. The first proposal, Quillenth continued, concerns the establishment of a galactic defense force to prevent any single species from threatening others. Ambassador Jin stood to address the Council. Earth supports this proposal, but with important conditions. The defense force must be commanded by representatives from all member species, not dominated by any single group. And its primary mission must be protection, not conquest. The Karathi representative, whose people had been among those enslaved by the Nexari, made enthusiastic clicking sounds. The Karathi agree completely. Never again will one species terrorize others. Over the past 6 months, the true extent of Nexari crimes had been revealed. Agent Ko Yunbi's intelligence work had uncovered evidence of systematic oppression going back centuries. The Nexari hadn't just threatened other species. They had been secretly manipulating galactic politics through bribery, assassination, and intimidation. Dr. Kim Hieri, now serving as Earth's chief cultural advisor, had worked with representatives from all species to understand how such corruption had been allowed to continue for so long. Fear, she explained to the Council. The Nexari used fear to silence opposition and prevent cooperation between other species. The Silicari representative flashed patterns of agreement. Through their translation device, their colors meant, isolation made us weak. Unity makes us strong. Admiral Do-Yun presented the military analysis that had led to Earth's victory. The Nexari made a fundamental error in their intelligence gathering. They saw what they expected to see, not what was actually there. They assumed that because Earth was young, it must also be primitive and weak. Engineer Yoon Sora, now promoted to Director of Galactic Technology Exchange, demonstrated some of the innovations that had made Earth's victory possible. We didn't invent new physics, she explained to the fascinated alien scientists. We simply applied existing knowledge in ways that hadn't been tried before. The quantum tunneling technology used by Lieutenant Han's fighters was actually based on principles that several species had discovered but never used for military purposes. Earth scientists had taken ideas from multiple species and combined them in unexpected ways. This is why cooperation is so important, Dr. Lim Jemin added as he displayed holographic models of the gravitational weapons. No single species has all the answers, but when we work together and share knowledge, we can accomplish amazing things. The Council spent days discussing the new structure of galactic government. The old system, where ancient species held permanent seats and newcomers were treated as junior members, was replaced with a rotating leadership that gave every species equal. Foistot President Ominji addressed the Council via quantum communication from Earth. We don't seek to dominate galactic politics, she assured the assembled representatives. Earth's goal is simple, a galaxy where all species can live in peace and prosperity, free from the threat of conquest or oppression. Elder Quillenth had privately shared his observations about humanity with other species leaders. In 8 centuries of life, he told them, I have seen many species rise to power. Most become corrupt and oppressive, just like the Nexari. But humans seem different. They could have conquered the galaxy after defeating the Nexari, but instead they chose to build something better. The new Galactic Compact was signed by all 12 species in a ceremony that was broadcast across the galaxy. The document established principles that would govern interstellar relations for generations to come. Equality between species, protection for the weak, and cooperation instead of competition. Captain Song Hyun-woo, whose deep strike missions had crippled the Nexari war machine, was appointed as the first commander of the new Galactic Defense Force. His fleet would be composed of ships from all member species, ensuring that no single group could dominate the others. The Defense Force will have one mission, Captain Song announced, to protect peaceful species from those who would threaten them. We will not conquer worlds or impose governments. We will only act to defend those who cannot defend themselves. As the ceremony concluded, Agent Ko Yunbi received a special commendation for her intelligence work. Her 3 years of undercover operation had not only provided crucial military intelligence, but had also exposed the full extent of Nexari corruption in galactic politics. I learned something important during my time with the Nexari, she told the Council. They genuinely believed they were superior to all other species. That belief made them blind to their own weaknesses and to the strengths of others. Admiral Kang Sun-mi, whose hidden fleet had delivered the crushing blow to the Nexari invasion force, spoke about the importance of preparation. Earth spent 50 years getting ready for this conflict, she explained. We knew someday we would have to defend ourselves against bullies. The key was being ready when that day came. The final speaker was a surprise to many council members. Former Nexari Admiral Zeth, one of the few Nexari military leaders who had not been convicted of war crimes, addressed the gathering via prison colony communication system. I fought humans at Kepler 442 and at Earth, he said quietly. I believed they were weak because they were young. I was wrong. Humans are dangerous not because of their weapons or their technology, but because of their determination. When you threaten something they care about, they will do whatever it takes to protect it. As the council session ended, representatives from all species mingled in the Great Hall of Centralis. For the first time in centuries, there was no fear in these conversations. The Karathi spoke freely with the Aquarans about trade agreements. The Silicari shared their artistic culture with the Zephyrians. The smaller species no longer worried about being dominated by the larger ones. Elder Quilinth stood with Ambassador Jin at a viewing port that looked out into the starry void. Your species has accomplished something remarkable, he told her. You could have become the new Nexari, ruling through fear and force. Instead, you chose to build something better. Jin smiled as she watched ships from a dozen different species dock at the station. Earth learned something important from studying other species, Elder Quilinth. True strength doesn't come from dominating others. It comes from inspiring them to be their best. Lieutenant Han Dong-hyuk, now promoted to colonel and serving as a pilot instructor for the Galactic Defense Force, watched young pilots from different species learning to work together. Humans flew alongside Karathi, Silicari, and even reformed Nexari in mixed squadrons that represented the new spirit of cooperation. In the months that followed, the galaxy began to change in ways that no one had expected. Trade flourished between species that had been afraid to interact under Nexari rule. Scientific discoveries accelerated as researchers from different worlds shared their knowledge freely. Art, music, and literature began crossing species boundaries for the first time in centuries. The Nexari homeworld, now governed by a democratic council, began the long process of making amends for their empire's crimes. Young Nexari volunteers worked alongside humans and other species to rebuild the worlds their military had damaged. Dr. Hieri established the Galactic Cultural Exchange Program, which allowed young beings from all species to live and study on other worlds. Understanding leads to respect, she explained, and respect leads to peace. As Ambassador Jin prepared for her first diplomatic mission to a newly discovered species beyond the galactic rim, she reflected on how much had changed since Captain Doyun's humiliation in the old council chamber. Earth had not only survived the challenge of galactic politics, but had transformed the galaxy itself. The lesson was clear and would be remembered for generations. Never underestimate a species that fights not for conquest but for